We're live, 9:56 in the morning in the AM. Morning motivation. Get your projects done. I'm here to steer you in the right direction. Usually to steer you in the wrong direction because usually whenever I get on and start talking to people about car stuff, it makes me want to get like new car stuff. And by new, I mean something from the wrecking yard or some other part for some other wrecking yard motor because that's how I roll. I don't roll McLaren F1 stuff. More like Junkyard 5.3, that sort of stuff. Today, we're going to talk about the thumbnail that I have up, and it's a really old Ford Racing supercharger. And you can see the thing that I like about it is kind of cool because it has it's an integrated casting. So it has it's a semi or longish runner manifold, not long, but better than typical blower stuff. And the blower bolts to the bottom side, so it feeds up into the runners, and then that wraps around. The elbow for the blower goes in and routes around into the back of the blower. It's kind of a cool packaging design deal, and this is, like I said, done way back for the guys at Ford Racing. This is a Magnuson, I think, supercharger, or an Eaton supercharger. And the interesting thing is I get I think because it's purple photographed so well, but I get lots of questions about this from the 462 valve guys, like, hey, where can I buy this? Was this kit still available? And unfortunately, it's not. It was discontinued a long time ago. I don't know if it's because, usually when big companies do these things, if sales drops off below a certain thing, they just don't redo it because, it's just not financially feasible for them. So, but the interesting thing is, when we take a look at this thing, I ran it on a stock 462 valve. I think that this was a Sean Highland 2 valve, but it had stock PI heads and stock cam. I think this one had forged pistons in it, and it would belong to Westech at the time, and we did a bunch of testing with it. But what I did was we ran this blower and we did header tests on it and throttle body tests. Bigger throttle body makes more boost, makes more power. Pulleys. Also did a camshaft on it. Let's see what we do here. Which cam do we put in here? The 262 2 valve cams. So mild cams, and the cams picked up 407 to 432, 25 to 30 horsepower. Lower the boost, which is good, especially on this application, because one of the things I want to talk about is I get lots of guys that responded to the video that I have up, because there's a whole video up that shows and details all of these things, all these tests that we did. But the thing that's interesting about this is that while it packages nicely and does have some runner length, it still has no intercooler on it, which I would actually trade the runner length for the intercooler, because I think that gain that you get from that is, it's a good trade-off. Runner length is nice. Having both of them would be ideal, but you can't always have that. Putting the cam in, helps. We didn't really lose, maybe a little bit at 2,500, not a lot from those small cams. I think from adjusting the cams, you probably could get that back. But I would almost always trade, it's better to have runner length and the intercooler, because that's the ideal combination. I don't know that this runner length, it would help, but they actually, it needs to be longer than this to really benefit. So if you look at what happens with a PI manifold, those are really long. So having the blower with that is really good. But if you have to decide between the two, I'd pick an intercooler, not just from a power standpoint, but also from reliability and to suppress detonation. And so you could ultimately get more power, in a safer manner. You could also, and I don't know if we did this on this one, I don't remember ever running like a water meth, like the boost cooler deal. I don't think we did this on this. And I'll go ahead and take a look and see. I'm going to take a look and see what our boost level was. So 6.9 pounds. Boostage. 6.9 pounds. And then when we put the cam in it, that brought it down almost 1 full point. So it did good. Or 1 pound of boost, which is really good. Less boost, less air temperature. Interesting. But the thing that's interesting is this thing is no longer available and hasn't been available for a really, really long time. And also, not just that, there are obviously better options out there for guys wanting to run this. If you put together a kit for a 2-valve, something that has an intercooler integrated into it, I think that there are other kits out there that are positive displacement blowers. Kenny Bell did some really good stuff that were intercooled, and that's a twin screw, so it's going to be better. It's bigger than this blower. I think that this was a 112. It might have been a 90, but I think it was a 112. So it's going to be limited in the power that it makes. I mean, when we put the blower on the stock motor, it basically made what a heads cam and intake, the heads cam and intake PI upgrade that I did. And if you do ported heads, a cam, and an intake manifold, you basically get this power putting the blower on. Or you could look at it the other way, that all I have to do is put a blower on and I get what all of that stuff is. I don't know which one of those methods would be more cost effective, but having the blower would be good, because then if you put the heads cam and intake manifold on, you're going to get even more power at a lower boost level, and then you could really change the pulley. I think we did one pulley change on it, and the pulley added, another pound of boost. We didn't go crazy on the pulley, but I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'll show you a picture if you guys can't see the thumbnail. This was the thumbnail for the video that's already up. This is the Ford racing deal. The blower's mounted underneath the manifold. You got the water crossover for it. Throttle body inlet goes in to the backside. You got it does have a bypass valve on, so when you're cruising, it's not building boost. So it's, like I said, it's a good looking product, especially on my bright purple background, my photo paper. But it worked well. So our pull for this morning. Since this one is no longer available and hasn't been for a while, does a 4.6 liter 2-valve need another blower kit brought to market? A lot of modular Ford love lately, huh? See who's here, what's going on. Morning. Bad bars, 1 bar. Nice. I can't remember if it was an M90 or a 112. It might have been the M90 that Roush used on their stuff, but I don't think it was, because this was fairly early on. But they still had the blower. They had the blower size and the rotor packs and everything from the 03 Cobra, because I think that this test was done after that. I have a V2 SI, 13 pounds on a stock bottom end, runs good. Have methanol, works great. In your opinion, everyone says 400 horsepower is a max on the stock bottom end. What do you think? It's nowhere near that. It's 50% above that, at least. I think I really need to do a big bang 4.62 valve. Hey, I was here a while ago asking about swapping 4.6 heads to PI so I could fit a supercharger. Recently got an 04 Police Vic to swap parts with my 92 MGM. They're both Windsor engines. Yeah, I recommend putting PI heads on a non-PI motor. It works good. Or ported PI heads. have an M90 on a 4.9 V8, makes about 6 psi, which is enough for me. That's good. So, Dean, you want the poll to be how many Jameses are there in the house? Am I able to swap the heads without buying anything weird like cams and gaskets? Yeah, the head gasket is the same for a PI and a non-PI. Single overhead cam, Tony. and then Tony is double overhead cam, Tony. Richard, love to see a stock bottom end 4.6 Big Bang video. I think that would be good. I think that people really want to see that, and I think it would completely dispel the myth about the 400 horsepower thing. Mike checking in from work. Welcome. We want cheap options. There's always going to be something expensive about these blower kits. We see that with the LS stuff. Hey, look, I've got this. You can run this cheap blower, but everything else is going to be expensive. If you had to make a dedicated manifold casting, even if you make it in China, it's not going to be cheap. You're not going to have, your couple $100 blower is going to be a couple $1,000. Ultimately, it's much cheaper to put a low dollar turbo on an LS or something than it is to do one of these blower upgrades. And the nice thing about your Vortec, the guy that asked about the V1, I think it was a V1, right? V2 SI. Okay. The nice thing about that is you get to keep the long runner factory intake manifold. Alex, you've been looking for the blower. It's just not available. I mean, they stopped selling it a long time ago, so you'd have to find a used one somewhere. The Nissan community doesn't think cams will help. So they don't think cams, something different than a stock cam makes more power. They Turbo Center, please. They don't know what they're talking about. Is it worth swapping the PI heads on my non-PI motor? If a head swap is easier than swapping the whole motor, and it's definitely going to be worth more power that way. But if you're running it if you're trying to run it on pump gas, just put the PI motor in. The non-PI isn't better for supercharger use. It's really intake that needs to be brought to market. An easy way to mount an M90 on a 4.6 would be amazing. A cast intake that uses the cheap M90 blowers on a 4.6 would be good. The kit that Supercoop Performance used to sell for the 4.6 was a 122. What did you say the stock bottom end max horsepower would be in your opinion? I don't know about a max number, but we've run 600 a lot. More than 600, like high 600s a lot. Underdog, you want them to continue production of the 4-lobe rotor pack instead of the 3-lobe? It's interesting that if you look at a twin screw and you look at the evolution of the twin screw, you have Kenny Bell change the rotor pack. They have a 4.6 instead of a 3.5, I think is what it was, that Whipple and the other guys are using. And that if you see the evolution of the Eaton supercharger, they went from a 2-lobe to a 3-lobe, and then they went to a twisted lobe, and now they're experimenting with a 4-lobe. So they're just trying to make the Roots blower, it seems like, more like a twin screw, because a twin screw is more efficient. Might as well go with a Torque Tech kit. That's the other one that I was thinking about. Lost a new pack of sanding discs. Got to clean the shop. My storage areas are just ridiculous. I need a couple of days just to get stuff organized. Can you do a test on a 4.9 Cadillac? Probably not. Maybe on the North Star, possibly. Is there a noticeable change from 241 to 243 cathedral heads? You can look at the video and see what the power change was when I tested them. We tested 799s. It's the same head though. Didn't somebody recycle the blower out of the Escalade and machine up the intake plate? What blower was ever in an Escalade? Wish the 0304 Cobra had more intake runner length. Yeah, and I did that test, Mike. So if you kind of want to see what happens with runner length, I had to do it on a Vortec, but we ran the Vortec made basically a lid that went over the factory 0304 air to water intercooler and lower intake manifold, just a big common plenum that they blew into with the blower. So I ran that, and then I ran without changing the blower, ran the factory like 2000 long runner NA Cobra intake manifold, and it's a lot better. Cole, they don't burn up much quicker. These motors last 300,000 miles, and it has nothing to do with usually the power output. So the boosted stuff lasts a long time. The factory offers boosted motors right from the factory, and so they offer them with warranties and stuff. Having the blower on there is not going to hurt anything as long as the tune is right and you change the oil and you do all that stuff. It'll last a really long time. Burn. See, you don't need to clean it now. 2-valve Mustangs on my buddy's dyno are making 400 to 500 wheel horsepower all day. 400 to 500 is a really, really big split, especially on a supercharged combination, because a lot of things will do the 400 number pretty easily, but the more number gets a lot harder with belt slippage and blower inefficiency. But I've seen that on these things. But with that modern big opening, different discharge, let's call it a high flow M90-ish. Some new Escalades were supercharged. Were they the LSA blower that they put in them? Tony, yes, you do have higher compression if you put PI heads on a non-PI short block versus just the PI stuff. The compression is going to be higher. That's why I said if you're just going to run pump gas, you're worried about a lot of little things here. Just put the PI motor in and put a blower on it, and you'll be fine. 4.6 Big Bang video all out till it pops would be a great video to dispel a lot of these myths about the cars came out. Tuning has changed a lot since the 4.6 valve. We know because we've run, like on the Kenny Bell stuff, we've run 4.6 valves with lots of boost on them. In fact, they did a lot of stuff that they shouldn't have done by running it. Oh, we want to see how much it makes all stock. I'm like, you shouldn't do that. I said, I understand that you just want to put the blower on, make lots of power. I said, but you should change the ring gap because that's what's going to break. No, we just want to do it all stock. I'm like, you're missing the point. You're going to break something, but not because it's not strong enough, but because it's gapped incorrectly. So it's not a weak piston or a weak rod or a weak block or whatever. This is just a preparation problem. Not everybody listens. Who makes a 234, 242, 602, 112 plus 4 for an LS2? Anybody will make a custom cam for you if you want that. Why do you want that specific camshaft? Oh, the 2023 has an Escalade in. Okay. Yeah, I'm not hip on the new stuff. When you're talking about the M90, it's not the same M90 that came on the 3800. No, it's not. This M90 that they're using, that they're talking about on these modular motors, is a whole different supercharger. Yeah, Bill, you're right. He said it's rare to see modern engines wear out. These motors don't get cylinder ridge at the top because the bores don't wear. That's why people are talking about, oh yeah, once this is broken in, it has all the ring gap it needs. No, it doesn't. The bore's not getting bigger. It doesn't do that. Unlike the trophy 4-cylinder that I had. Richard, we need to design a Super Richie style multi-piece intake for the 4.6. Use the same wrench for everything and just change the lower plenum out to match the application. I already did that. I made the manifold basically is 2 halves, and so it bolts onto a 5.4 and a 4.6 exactly the same. I've just made a connection for the water crossover on the front. Hot mess. You thought that they were it would make sense that it was an LSA because it's something that they already had. Have you done a video explaining compression ratios and their effect on boost? Is it more compression always better, or is there a happy medium when boost? Your question would have to be much more narrowly focused. More compression makes more power NA and under boost, but are you talking about trying to run this on 91 octane? Then you get into a question of how much compression should I have with how much boost and timing and octane level and all that stuff. Then it gets really nitpicky in the middle there. JPL. Oh, I thought you were talking about the M90 stuff. I thought you were talking about the M90 making 500 at the tire, which somebody said that they did, but like I said, that's when you say that, and the 3.8 liter guys are thinking, oh, good, I can make 500 at the tire with this M90. That'd be a really, really tall order. 400 at the tire would be a really, really tall order, I think, with the M90 that they use on the 3.8 liters, 3800s. I've seen stock bottom end hold 530 rear wheel horsepower with a turbo kit. Personally, I've stopped at 430. We've made 700 with turbos on stock bottom ends, and we made 650 to 670 or something like that with the superchargers, with the Kenny Bell and with the Vortec and stuff. And it will definitely do that. Tony, I don't know about supercharger kits for that. None of the supercharger kits are going to be inexpensive for that. Admiral, pick up a couple of spare ones, because if I do that test, then you're saying that the price is going to go up. Quick question about the Trophy 4. What did the crankshaft look like? Being half a V8, was it like I think it looks like a modern inline 4-cylinder. It's 2 up and 2 down. How about a 112 or 122? You can run those blowers, and if that response is to what blower he should run, finding the blowers is never the problem, but the manifold. Burns. I used to do a bunch of way cooler things, have a couple of SEMA trophies laying around, but that was working for other people. Now you're doing your own deal. That's good. I wish more companies had smog legal turbo kits for the 4.6. Yeah, it's hard to get turbo kits certified. We did see the Demon, the new 170. How does the engine dyno compare to the real world street use as far as strength goes? The dyno's harder on it than the street is. You never experience a stationary load like the dyno does, and that if you're running it through the quarter mile, it doesn't do what the dyno is doing by controlling the rate of acceleration. So you could have the run take, I don't know, 10 or 12 seconds or whatever, 15 seconds, depending on how far you're sweeping and how, from 3,000 to 6,000 is 3,000 RPM. If you're doing 300 RPM per second, that's 10 seconds. And we do some of these motors, like the LS stuff, this 5.3 that I've been running, it has hundreds of runs already. And so, but again, that's not hard on the motor. The motors are designed to do that. Richard, I'm stepping at the tail end of this. Are you discussing the Allen Magnuson M90 supercharger kits? The photo that's up, the thumbnail is up, is the Ford Racing kit that was done for the 4.6 valve, and it's no longer available. But Dean, let's see, somebody was talking about Dean, hard pass on crypto. I know carb companies are destroying all the last few, the cab companies. Oh, the for Crown Vics or something, they're destroying the 4.6s. Those dynamics are the questions I want answered. Diminish returns. The only way to answer that is with knock sensors, and it would be much better to test that real world out in the street, because where you get detonation is not going to be at the peaks of those things. It's going to be, at least not at the horsepower peak, it's going to be driving around, and it's going to be rolling into the throttle. It's going to be near the torque peak or below. PI 2-valve Fox Lake intake. Wow. I haven't seen one of those in a long time. AccuFab throttle body, long tubes, catless, X-pipe, Vortec. 15 pounds, that's a lot. E85, 12.5 to 1 compression. Ported head, stage 2. Well, did you say that you have cams in it? So stage 2 cams. Okay, so when we ran the PI motor with ported PI heads, it was a non-PI short block, but ported PI heads, just a PI intake manifold, and the 274 cams with the AccuFab throttle body and long tubes, it could make 400 horsepower NA. And so if you're running 15 pounds, it's not going to double that, but that certainly could be. And with the 85, it might be 750 or something, or somewhere near there if you have enough timing and stuff in it, and a good intercooler. And it doesn't say whether that's intercooled or not. Yeah, don't mention the greatness of junkyard engine parts. From now on, I'm just going to talk about how terribly expensive junkyard stuff is. On a 4.6 valve aluminum block, Wiseco pistons, how many pounds of boost could you run before piston to valve clearance issue? The boost has nothing to do with, piston to wall clearance becomes an issue. I thought, okay. You only have, 3.7. A little more than 3.5 thousandths piston to wall clearance on a forged piston. Is that what Wiseco recommended? Although this is a fairly small bore motor, right? Seems like, Mike, let me know if that's what they recommended on their forged piston. What are the different characteristics of a centrifugal versus a twin screw? You can take a look at the video that I have on a modular. This is a 4-valve, but we ran a twin screw, a Roots, a centrifugal, and a turbo, all at the same boost level, all at the same timing, same air fuel, and you can see how different they are. But a centrifugal has a rising boost curve, and a twin screw, which is positive displacement, has a slightly rising, but it's much more at the bottom and then rises up slowly. If you pulley them to make the same peak boost, the twin screw would have a lot more average boost and a lot more average power production. Alex, you're worried about something that you don't need to be worried about. You don't need to. I would not worry about maximizing the compression ratio. If you're building a street motor, especially if it's something you're going to run on pump gas, I would run a turbo on it, and then I would run it at 8.5 or 9-1, and not worry about it. The turbo is going to make the power that you want. Hogan quoted me $7,000 for my custom intake manifold, and you think it's money well spent? Wish somebody would make a turbo kit for the Crown Vics. Tony, there's nothing stopping you from putting a PI motor in place of your non-PI motor. Salty, you'll be a lot happier with a 5.7 compared to a V6. Richard, I'm saying we need to do a single plenum, single throttle body setup that will fit under at least a decent tall cowl hood. So will the single plane Edelbrock fit under those hoods? And the best manifold that I've seen for the modular stuff are those Boss manifolds or the Cobra R manifold styles for the modular Fords. Some sort of cross ram like that is going to be the best way to go. Yeah, Burns, that's always fun when you you have a bin and you're like, look at all this space. I got the big bin. And then you fill it up and then you go, this is great. I filled it up with all kinds of heavy metal stuff. And now it's permanent. I like putting them on the like little furniture dolly things that you get from Harbor Freight, and then you can just kind of wheel them around. Question for other guys: any future testing for a Y block? Probably not a Y block. A Toyota would be cool. It's just hard to get a new motor up, and it's very time consuming and very expensive to run a new motor on the engine dyno. Burns, that's good. I have a 2010 Lincoln car. What can I do to up the horsepower? Same thing you do to every motor. Long tube headers, tune, air intake, ported heads, cam, boost, nitrous. Just an FYI, if I remember correctly, the PI intake is much better than the Fox Lake. Is the Fox Lake that that P51 thing? Is 150 shot 2-inch for a stock block 2 valve. We've run those lots on the dyno. Mike, I wouldn't use a formula, a piston formula for boost versus piston to wall clearance, because the boost doesn't determine the temperature, and that's what's going to determine that growth. And boost from one blower, like boost from a blower without an intercooler, is completely different than boost from one with an intercooler. What is the operating temperature of the motor? How long are you running the boost? All of these things change. I'd rather err on the loose side on these things so that you don't have to worry about this stuff. But don't think that if they say 15 pounds is okay at this, that makes it okay, that you could absolutely do that, because you might not be able to. Have you tested Speedmaster's 148? I don't know. I don't know what intake that is. What is that for? What motor is that for and stuff? Let's see. We're at 14 psi boost and 11-to-1 compression with nitrous. It's like if you have octane, you can do stuff like that. Platinum coated titanium, and then sprinkled with saffron. Because there's intercooled way too much. The way too small M dyno, you could make 400 wheel horsepower on an MN12, but power drop is intake temperature. I don't know what that is. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, Tony, good luck, man. Adding the Bostel to 2V is trick. You could make that. I'm saying that's what I would do if you wanted to fit it under the hood and make a good intake manifold, is I would make a cross ram style intake. We need an aluminum maximum boost big bang LS. We really don't. The L33 is going to do the same thing that the LM7 does. Lots of guys have run lots and lots of boosts with that, but I'm not going to do that on an LS1 or LS2 or LS3 block. Quite honestly, I don't care about any of those blocks, and I just don't run them over 1,000 horsepower, and don't want to show people that you could. If you wanted a high revving supercharged LS2, what mods would you make? You just pick a camshaft and spring package that will allow you to run in, for whatever reason you want to run high RPM, whatever the desired RPM range is. And then if you're running lots of RPM, a centrifugal blower works very well if you're a high RPM kind of guy. 4.6 needs room for forward-facing turbo manifolds and a downpipe that still goes under the car. It boosts less than 7 psi. Is the restriction of intercooler worth it? Yes, every time under any circumstances, you should put an intercooler on. An intercooler is not a restriction. You can have an intercooler that's no restriction at all. You'll get a drop in boost from a change in temperature, but it's not restricting the airflow any more than a tube is. I always recommend an intercooler, not even just for power, just because it's like having lower compression. It just adds to the tuning window, the safety margin. And I like that. I would much rather have 9-to-1 than 10-to-1 for a street motor and be able to drive it around and not have to worry about detonation. Whatever power the 10-to-1 gave me is not worth like the added peace of mind and the bigness of the tuning window. Same thing with intercooler. You can run. There's lots of guys running around without intercoolers. I ran my Vortec and my Mustang almost the whole time I had it with no intercooler on it. But it would be better with an intercooler as long as we had one that was big enough to not be a restriction. Please, if you guys are asking a question, don't ask me what my thoughts are. I don't know what you mean by that. I don't understand that question. You got to be specific about your question. Thoughts are general, and I don't answer questions with the word thoughts in them, so that you guys know. Green Bass, you built a subwoofer box, and now the car's dumping all the coolant. It's all about that bass, right? Can you run an intercooler on roots blowers? Yeah, it's done all the time. All of the like the factory Cobra, the 03 Cobra, that's a roots blower with an intercooler under it. The LSA blowers, the twin screws that the Dodge guys are using, all of those positive displacement blowers, they usually have intercoolers from the factory. The Harley Davidson Lightning one, the Lightning or the Harley Davidson version, it's really good to have an intercooler, especially with the roots blower, because roots blower is kind of the one that's going to heat it up more than anything. Admiral, how do you think the Navigator puts out the torque that a V10 does? It's 100 foot-pounds less. Unless I'm reading these specs wrong. If you had a choice between driving a stock LS2 Corvette or a 3-valve Mustang with $5,000 to $10,000 in power and suspension mod, would you choose? It depends on what you want the car to do. A Corvette is a better car than a Mustang. It handles better. It probably rides better. It gets better mileage. It's more aerodynamic. It's faster. if you have a car that you want to modify and you want to do that, because that's part of the enjoyment of the car, is doing the stuff yourself. Um, like I said, depends on what you want to do with it. If you have a Mustang and you want a Mustang and you want to modify it, that's good. If you can just go buy a Corvette and have it do the things that you want, that's also good. And that's always an individual choice. There's no universal thing there. Richard, how come some intercoolers are marketed as 400 horsepower and some are marketed as 600 horsepower if they aren't a restriction? You can create a restriction with the size of the intercooler. The word intercooler is not universal, just like the word turbo is not interchange or universal. There are different sizes of those things. So you can put one on that's this big and then it will be restrictive. But if you put one on that's sized, and I think I've made that in my statement originally, if you size it properly, it's not going to be a restriction. Looking at Google, it shows a Speedmaster centrifugal supercharger for under. Yeah, they copied the Vortec, I think, but I've never tried one. Have you done any vacuum pump testing on different size street motors? A vacuum pump does work, and it does make more power. It can make more power, but it usually depends on your ring package. Benny, I don't have a shop. How much does polishing a throttle body plenum increase horsepower? I don't know what throttle body plenum is. Are you talking about the internal passage or something else that's attached to the throttle body? Or are you talking about the plenum that's in the intake manifold? Would 8.1 injectors be big enough for an LQ4 6-liter with a truck Norris cam? I don't know what size the stock 8.1 injectors are. Does anybody know? .1 liter injector size. I don't know if they're going to have the injector size on this thing. Oh, you're useless to me. I don't know how big they are, but you're going to need something that supports, I'd get something that supports 8.1, they're saying is 31 pounds an hour. 8.1 Marine is 44. So let's see if that's right. 31 times 16. Those would support near 500 horsepower. That would be enough. The base didn't break it. I know. Let's see. I checked an 03 Navigator's rate at 355 foot-pounds. Yeah, the V10s are 425 and 457. That's a lot more. That is a FA18. What about an interchiller? Somebody said that they were going to have me or bring one over that I could test it, but I have never tested one. Brent at PFI Speed Dyno and RX NA with an intercooler with and without. Yeah, on a draw-through application, that probably would not be a good idea. And also, again, what size was it? And there were people who were wanting to cool the air we talked about that before. Guys have run those at Bonneville on NA applications. You say Google. Forgot my phone. The elbow of the throttle body is attached to polish it and wanted to know if it would give any gains. I doubt it. I did test a lot of the aftermarket elbows, and they seem to add a little bit of power. And I have videos up on that. And I tested them NA and supercharged. Have you ever tested? Have you ever dealt with used supercharger oil? It's nasty. It's awful stuff. I've cracked open a lot of the M90s when I was doing the 3800 business that I had, and because we used to do pulley swaps on them, what we do snout swaps basically. Yeah, and that stuff is just awful. Benny, happy to help. Paid good money for my PI2 valve intake. I'm not going to replace it with no roots blower. There you go. Oh, I was looking at the injectors. Yeah, I'm still scrolling down. Turbo Centra, they don't worry about what other people say. If I did that, I would never come on here. I would never post a video on social media. Is the LQ9 an iron block LS2? Kind of. The short block is it has a flat top piston, but the heads are different. And it has a different camshaft and a different intake. So no, it's not it's not an LS2. Importing and polishing a set of PI heads, I think it's a good idea. They need to flow more. Don't worry about the opening of the port on the PI head. It's already plenty big enough. Green Bass, I don't know about the shift kits for that. Picked up a 98 GT. That was like, I had one of those. Did you test aftermarket 4.6 elbows versus the later and larger drive-by-wire throttle bodies? No, I think we were testing with, I think that most of those were set up for 75 millimeter throttle bodies, if I remember right. Because we tested the bigger throttle bodies on because AccuFab had a throttle body. Ben, any chance of you doing a video on tuning a Holly Extreme? No, I'm not a tuner. The stuff that I do on the engine dyno is all just wide open throttle. What vehicles have you owned? I have owned lots of them. We'll go over that maybe on the 24-hour thing that I do. Are the compressor supercharger guys still working getting a product to market? I don't know. I'd have to ask them. That was kind of cool though. Christopher, what is your question? Will 6-inch rods work on a 400 small block? It will, but you got to make sure. I would check cam to rod clearance on that, and then you're going to have the piston, an aftermarket piston done for it. You should Turbo Central. You should have heard all of the all of the hate mail and all the BS mail that we got when I did the first Big Bang motor. Freiberger came to me and said, what the heck did you do? I said, what do you mean? He goes, that story, I have gotten more response from that story than anything we've ever done. He said, I get either people that say this is the most fantastic thing in the world, or this is all just BS. No, there's no way that it can do this. He said, either way, it's good. He said, but even the people are telling you, oh no, that's not real. They'll only take 10 pounds or whatever. Just don't worry about it. It's just chatter. The 98, I don't know. I don't think that the H pipe exhaust, and this would be a good question for Sanchez. I don't know if the modular Ford H pipe is the same as the Windsor H pipe in that SN95 car. I don't know if that's the case. I'd have to ask Mark if that's the case. It would be nice if they did that, but I know that the exit of the manifolds is different. So I don't think that it is, but I can't swear to that. Have you seen an on-3 turbo kit? No, but I mean, the turbo is the turbo and the intercooler, but the turbo mostly is the important part of the kit. That determines how much power you can make. Why do people de-stroke LS engines? I don't know. It's cool. I mean, I understand people wanting to do that. You're not doing it for power, though. You're doing it for less power. But still, they want to, short stroke, high RPM. Just do high RPM without the short stroke. Hot mess is a factory modular Ford um, exhaust, a factory X pipe. It's a 95 17 millimeter different to the Fox in spacing due to the chassis, the gearbox spacing. Car or motorcycle guy. I hope that that question is not for me. Because I don't have a full list of stuff that we did. For us, it's just bolting the heads on and then putting the intake manifold on. Could you, in theory, build a 351 Cleveland that revs higher? Yeah, look at all of the look at all the original NASCAR motors, or even a better example of real high RPM stuff would be 351 Cleveland drag race motors. That's all I needed to know. I was curious what charger brand you stuck with. I didn't stick with anything. I test everything. So we ran a Kenny Bell on it. We ran a Vortec on it. We ran nitrous on it. We ran turbos on it. We ran different heads on it. We ran different cams on it. It wasn't a build for me. It's a demonstration to other people on what things do what things. So when we test a bunch of intake manifolds, I'm not picking one because I'm doing a build. I don't do that. I just show you guys what works, and so you guys get to pick the one that you want. Would you ever do a big bang on a Honda V6? It would be cool. I'd like to do a J Series big bang, but I want to do a J Series build up first. But when we do that, if I keep the stock bottom end and run ring gap in it, then the bottom end part of it will be prepped for a big bang. And then if we put a ported head, put cams in it, and then super Richie intake manifold of some form, and then we could run, and we'll definitely have a turbo on it or two, and then we can run the boost up on them to see. I think when we put ring gap in those, it'll be interesting to see. It'd probably be a J32. Be interesting to see how much power that one of those will make. I think Richard, I think Comp can still make custom cams for the V10. I'll ask them over there and see. Honda, I think a 3-liter is the start of the J Series stuff. I think they had a 3-liter, a 3.2, a 3.5, and a 3.7. Green Bass. We know that it'll be 600. We've done 600 at the wheels on a stock one, so we know that it'll do that. I've never done a Subaru motor. We'll go ahead and close out our poll at 73%, saying yes. There needs to be more blower kits. Interesting. I've never done anything on the EcoBoost stuff. We've done some stuff, run some of them on the chassis dyno, but not on the engine dyno. The motor mounts for the big block are the same. Big block and small block are the same. Lots of stuff is the same on a big block and a small block. The distributor, the motor mounts are, the water pump's different. Maybe just that. Bell housing. I have a friend with an EcoBoost that makes 490. That's nice. The EcoBoost Explorer is going to be a V6, right? Or is his the 4-cylinder? Hot mess. Yeah, I don't know about the same location. The motor mount is the same. I think that I think it is. I think it's the same. The motor mounts we use on the engine dyno are the same. We've run the those V6 EcoBoosts in trucks on the engine dyno. I mean on the chassis dyno. I was really surprised. And driving them, they feel really good. Wow, look at you go. New high for Amazon today. Not a new high for Tesla. How about AMD? New high for AMD as well. Look at you. Look at you go. Who's a good girl? Who's a good girl? Have you done anything with a Hurricane engine? Nope. I've never done any. Well, I have run the closest I've gotten is a newish 5.7 Hemi. So let's see. We're going to see if Amazon takes a turn here or AMD takes a turn. Wow, Tesla, you're going nuts up there at the top. Crazy, crazy. The plastic intake likes to blow apart. I think that they bolt into the same place. Let's go. Let's go to the interwebs. Yes, the cylinder block engine mounting bolt patterns are identical and are located the same relative distance forward from the rear bell housing face. Let's see. Hot rod form. In lots of cases, they interchange without issues. It's saying that the big block will sit up a little bit higher than the small block, but it will bolt. It will bolt in. If you do a J series, could you check how close an Audi 3000T supercharger is to fitting the heads directly? Those Audi blowers are neat. I mean, you'd have to go up and look and see if I doubt that it would bolt on, because they're completely different engines. So the water passages and the flange and all that stuff is probably going to be different. Is the bore spacing even the same between those motors? I do want to swap a 6.1 into an 89 Daytona. Yeah, hot mess it is. It's going to sit the motor is going to be like the carb pad and stuff. It should be higher on the big block than it is on the small block. Cal Hood, yo. One more minute. John, I don't know about those transmissions. I did see the Dodge release. Silent, you don't want a 245, 250 cam. That's too big. And the other thing that I don't want to get involved in, I don't want to be one of the 10 guys that you go around and ask for cams. So if you ask me about the cam, I told you what cam you should get. If you don't want to get that, then you don't get to ask anymore. If you want to go ask 10 other people about what they think that they should put in, I don't want to be one of those 10. Trust me, if you put a hot rod cam in it and you have those turbos on it and a 408, it's going to work great. If you put a 245, 250 cam in, it's going to be soft down low. It's going to be laggy. It will come on the big end if that's what you want. But the smaller cam will, on the 408, will allow you to max out the 67s. And you don't need a big cam for that. I have a guy that used to come into West Tech that would drive me nuts, because he would come in and ask me all these questions about this LS1, and he's asking really weird specific questions. I'm like, look, stop. I said, I can't, first of all, I'm dyno testing, so I can't sit here and spend an hour with you and answer all these little questions because you're worried about the wrong thing. Just tell me what motor you have and tell me how much power you want. I said, and I can walk over to the dyno. It's probably in my head, but if I have to, I can walk over to the dyno and spec you out a combination that will make the power that you want. But I don't want you asking, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? We can't go through that. Well, what if I like radius the throttle body, or what if I did this error? Like, stop, just tell me what the power you want and I'll tell you how to make it. And then I told him, I like this he wants 480 horsepower, whatever. Okay, here's a combination that did that. Here's the cam, here's the ported head, here's the intake manifold that did this. In fact, it did more than that. So you can go get that if that's what you want. Okay. And he came back in the next day. But I posted this online and all these guys said this and this and this. I'm like, whoa, stop. We're not doing this. I'm not part of that group. I'm not arguing with you, and I'm not arguing with other people. I'm not giving you my internet opinion about how much power something makes. I'm showing you that here's the combination and here's the power that it made. Now the only choice is, do you want this? If you don't want this, I don't care. If you do want this, I don't care. I've already answered your question, and I'm not going to try to convince you that my data is more right than their opinion. I don't care about that. I thought that I solved a problem for you, and it was very, very easy. And then now your problem is solved. So there's no more of this. And so I just dismissed the guy. And, I honestly don't care if I was rude to him. I was not at all to begin with. And then when he kept wanting to interject, but what about this? But this guy said this. I'm like, look, We're not having that conversation. We're done. I got stuff to do. I've already answered your question. It's done. CV axles. Yeah. Data is something, and then opinions are something else. They're not equal. And the thing is, the other thing that happens is, um, I tell people, like, look, here is what happened. Like the turbo cam thing is a good example. Here, look, I did all this data. I've tested all of these. They all responded like this. So I have all this data to back this up. Yeah, but this guy, and the thing that they like to do is say, well, this guy that's a legend in the industry, whoever it is, Nelson or Morris or Kenny Duttweiler or whatever. I'm like, look, I love those guys, and those guys have forgotten more about making power or building motors than I ever will. I said, but none of that, none of their whatever you're quoting of them changes this data. It doesn't do that. It's not an attitude. It's not a value thing, like who's cooler online or who's been doing it longer or who builds race engines. It's none of that. It's here's the data, and then do you want to use that data? So they want to, that's right. That's right. They want to hear the answer that they want me to give. It's not always like that. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not. And the worst part about that is people want me to validate their opinion about something, and I'm like what's, what should I do? What car would you build? What, what combination would you put together? No, the combination I'd put together is my stock 5.3 because that's what works for me. You get to choose. I'm just going to give you all the choices, and then you get to pick that. I'm not going to help you pick that. It's not me. It's not my car. It's not my camshaft. It's not my cylinder head. It's not any of that. Silent, will the hot rod cam act like a Truck Norris cam? Where it will take a bit more boost at the same power level. What the hot rod cam will do compared to this bigger cam that you were looking at is it will make more low speed power. So it will have more boost response. And then if you want to max out those turbos, you just turn the boost up. My guess is with 67 millimeter turbos, I don't know whether you're going to do all of what those turbos will do, but it will allow you to do that. It will just allow you to do that with a whole bunch more fun and response and drivability down low. That's the combination I like, and that's what I would do. Are certain cams better for higher RPM? Yes. There are cams that are designed to make power. Ones typically with more duration want to run at a higher engine speed or optimize at a higher engine speed. Todd, I appreciate the comment, but even if my data isn't, I wouldn't say perfect. I make mistakes too, but I usually have lots and lots of tests. I don't just have one where I go, look, when I ran this cam with the turbo, I did this. So therefore every cam must do that. No, if I have that one and I have this one and I have 50 more that, after you do that so many times, you're like, it's going to do that. Silent, you could make 700 horsepower with those turbos on a 4.8 with a stock cam. So you're good. Hot mess, 1.6 liter Honda motor, VTEC universal T3, T4 turbo. A 57 millimeter, a 5.7 AR. I don't know what size turbo that is, so I don't know what their description is. I know that that's what they're giving you. I'd need to know what size the wheel is to decide whether or not it will support 400 horsepower. But 400 horsepower on a 1.6 single cam VTEC is a pretty good sized turbo. And the interesting thing with the cams is that I usually recommend smaller cams for turbo applications But the thing is, I'm not recommending one cam that is the only cam that will work. That hot rod cam or the Truck Norris cam, there's about 8,000 cams that are sized like that, offered by all of the different manufacturers. They will all work. Quite honestly, if you put a Truck Norris cam in there, it would also work. It would also work very well. The hot rod cam, a little bit bigger. It's going to shift power out a little bit farther than the Truck Norris cam. But you can make 700 at the tire with a 5.3 with a stock cam and on a 6.0 and on a stroker 6.0. There's lots of cams that will do that. There isn't just one magic cam that does that. There isn't one that's going to be better than that. There are only cams that are going to be different than that. Wife wants more power, no chop, L96. A Truck Norris would be pretty good for that. Or a stage 1 truck cam. People don't listen well, Steve. Yeah, Nelson are awesome, but their budget they're playing with. Yeah, and they make obviously they know how to make power. They're usually making power in the not the RPM range that your typical junkyard LS is, and in a different way. What we're talking about is just the vast majority of people, and they're dealing with the upper echelon of, a Nelson motor is probably a $25,000 thing. That's not what we're looking at. Lucky Costas combo looks awesome. It rips the tires at any speed, and any turbo LS will do that. There's no magic one cam. There's no magic one turbo. There's no magic one combination. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of cams that will do that, and hundreds of turbos and combinations that will do that. I want L2 to sound like a Ferrari. You need to get the 8-into-1 exhaust, right, for that. Or put the flat plane crank in it that everybody wants. Have you ever tested bolt-on parts for Buick? Like the Grand National motor? I haven't run a Grand National motor on the engine dyno. But it does the same thing as the 3800 and the 4.3 and every other motor. Ported heads, bigger turbo, intercooler, intake manifold. Silent Mist, you won't be able to run 25 pounds on that combination with those turbos. You'll never get there. Your maximum power is going to come way before 25 pounds. And it doesn't matter the boost level that you're making the power at, given the change that we're talking about, is irrelevant. The boost isn't going to hurt you. Hot mess. Yeah, 52 millimeter should easily do 400 horsepower. A 5276. That's big enough to do 400. Yeah, Silent Mist, if your 408 makes 550 horsepower, which it should easily do that, it's going to be 1,000 at 14. It's going to be 1,100 at 14.5 pounds, which is going to be up where those 67 millimeter turbos are. So 25 pounds is never going to happen. 20 pounds on that would be a tremendous amount of power, and you'll never get there on pump gas. So Jimmy, you got a Roadmaster with an LT1. Those are the iron-headed ones too. That's kind of cool. I like those motors. Feels like tornadoes outside. We had lots of wind yesterday and hail. It was crazy. It was scaring the dogs. Hot mess. If you're, I wouldn't put that turbo on it. I'd put a smaller one on it. If it's a 1.6 single cam, I'd put a much smaller turbo on it. You'll have a lot more fun on a regular T3 kind of deal than you would with a turbo that makes 400. Because the number of 1.6 single cams that make 300 at the tire are not a lot. I know, guys, everybody's going to tell you that they do, but 200 at the tire on a single cam is way more than norm. And so one that makes good boost response is going to be much more fun driving around. Rumble Canada, you have 10 degrees of timing in it. So you're trying to be like super safe. That thing with E85 and 20 degrees of timing where it needs to be would be really good. LS2, 700 horsepower can be achieved with more fuel and boost. Yeah, easily. You'll need ring gap in there, but 700 horsepower is easy even with a stock LS2. Ken Detweiler did a lot of testing back in the day. Yeah, he did. So when I had the block done, I was going to do a centrifugal and only had the rings gapped at 22. So for turbos, I open them up. How much power are you trying to make? If you're going to max these out, you probably need more than 22. Richard, the manifold I have for it is a T3. Yeah, but you can get a small T3 though. Like the T3s that we used to run on the SVO Mustangs, those were little T3s, and a single one of those is pretty good. And those are smaller than 52 millimeter, I think, right? Remember right? You should be able to get a little T3 that's like a 300 or 350 horsepower. I was thinking of 46 millimeter probably is where we were at on the ones that we used. Yeah, they don't have good specs on there that I'm looking at. Yeah, KO3s and KO4s, the VW stuffers are pretty small. .40 to 44 millimeters. That's kind of the range that I was thinking for this thing. We had some 46s that we ran as twins on the, I think that those were Garrett's though, that were run on the 4.6 4-valve. And then we ran 57s after that. Hot mess, you can try it. Just that size inducer is big for a 1.6 single cam. Yeah, Kenny definitely knows how to build power. I gotta get going. I can't stay here all day. I got stuff to do. Thank you guys all for showing up, but I'll be back tonight. 7 o'clock. Be here.